It's funny how fast everything can fall apart. 17 years of marriage, gone in less than 10 minutes. I stood there in the entryway of our home, my home, the one I'd spent years fixing up, watching my wife, Clarissa, laugh like I was some kind of joke. No divorce papers needed. Just leave, she said, her voice sharp and cold, like she'd been waiting to say it for months. She barely even looked at me. Her new boyfriend, Reed, was right there beside her, grinning like he'd just won some big prize. He kicked off his muddy shoes and plopped them right on the coffee table I'd built with my own hands years ago. The wood was scratched now, scuffed from his careless feet, and I felt this tight knot in my chest. But I didn't say anything. What was there to say? She'd made up her mind, and I wasn't about to beg. I turned away from them and walked upstairs to our bedroom. The room smelled like her perfume still, that floral stuff she'd worn since we were dating. I grabbed my suitcase from the closet, the old black one with the broken zipper I'd been meaning to replace. I started folding my clothes, shirts first, then pants, then socks. I took my time, making sure every crease was neat, every stack perfect. It wasn't about stalling. It was about keeping my hands busy so I wouldn't punch something. Downstairs, I could hear them talking, laughing even. Reed's voice was loud, cocky, like he owned the place already. "Nice house," I heard him say. "Could use some updating, though." Updating. Like he had any right to judge what I'd built. I zipped the suitcase shut and carried it down the stairs. Clarissa was leaning against the kitchen counter now, sipping a glass of wine, my wine, from the bottle I'd bought for our anniversary last month. She didn't even glance up as I walked past. Reed was sprawled out on the couch, flipping through channels on the TV like he'd lived there forever. I stopped at the front door, my hand on the knob, and took one last look around. The pictures on the wall, us at the beach, us at her cousin's wedding, stared back at me like ghosts. 17 years of memories, and she was throwing it all away for this guy. I could have yelled. I could have demanded an explanation. But what would that change? She'd already checked out. So I opened the door and stepped outside. The air was cool, the night quiet except for the hum of crickets. I tossed my suitcase into the back of my truck, an old pickup I'd kept running since before we got married. The engine sputtered to life, and I pulled out of the driveway without looking back. My hands gripped the wheel tight, my knuckles white. Clarissa thought she'd humiliated me, that she'd won some kind of victory by kicking me out like that. She had no idea who I really was. No clue what was coming. I drove down the street, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror, and I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not anymore. It was something calmer, something sharper. She wanted me gone? Fine, I'd leave. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I pulled into a gas station a few miles away and parked under the flickering lights. My phone sat heavy in my pocket. I pulled it out, opened the contacts, and scrolled to a number saved only as command. My thumb hovered over it for a second before I typed out a quick message. Initiate. Subject confirmed. Proceeding as planned. I hit send and leaned back in the seat, waiting. The reply came almost instantly. All teams ready. Phase 1 begins 0900. I read it twice, letting the words sink in. 17 years of pretending, of hiding, and now it was all about to unravel. Clarissa thought she'd seen the last of me. She thought I was just some boring guy she could toss aside. She didn't know the truth. Not yet. I started the truck again and drove toward the city. My mind was racing, but my hands were steady. I'd spent years building a life with her, playing the part she wanted me to play. The quiet husband, the guy who fixed the leaky sink and paid the bills on time. She never asked about my late nights, my business trips, the locked drawer in my office she wasn't allowed to touch. She didn't care enough to wonder. And maybe that was the real problem. I wasn't just leaving the house tonight. I was leaving the lie I'd lived for her. The gas station lights faded behind me as I merged onto the highway, the road stretching out dark and empty. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she'd find out what she'd really thrown away. And me? I'd finally stop pretending. I drove through the night, the highway lights blurring past like streaks of yellow paint. My truck's engine rumbled steady under me, a familiar sound that kept me grounded while my mind spun. Clarissa's words kept echoing in my head. No divorce papers needed. Just leave. The way she'd laughed, like I was nothing, stung more than I wanted to admit. 17 years, and she'd tossed me out like an old pair of shoes. Reed's smug face flashed in my mind too, his feet on my coffee table, his voice bouncing around my house like he belonged there. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, my knuckles whitening again. But I didn't let myself get lost in that. Not now. There was too much to do. I glanced at my phone on the passenger seat. The screen was still lit up from that message I'd sent. Initiate. Subject confirmed. Proceeding as planned. The reply from command glowed back at me. All teams ready. Phase 1 begins 0900. It was real now. No turning back. I'd always known this day might come, but I never thought it'd be like this. My own wife kicking me out and handing me the perfect opening all at once. She thought I was some boring accountant, stuck in a cubicle crunching numbers for the government. I let her think that. It was easier that way. Safer, too. She didn't need to know about the late-night meetings, the classified files, the times I'd come home with bruises I blamed on tripping down the stairs. She never pushed for more. Never cared enough to ask. The road stretched out ahead, dark and quiet except for the occasional headlights of a passing car. I turned off the highway after about an hour and headed toward a spot I hadn't been to in months, a safe house tucked away in the woods outside the city. The Bureau called it a black safe, a place off the grid where agents like me could lay low when things got messy. The gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled up to the cabin. It didn't look like much, just a small wooden shack with a sagging porch and a rusty mailbox. Perfect cover. I grabbed my suitcase and stepped out, the cool night air hitting my face. The crickets were loud here, a steady hum that drowned out the noise in my head. Inside, the place was bare. A couch, a table, a single lamp flickering with a weak bulb. No pictures, no decorations, just the essentials. I dropped my bag by the door and checked my watch. It was just past midnight. 9 hours until Phase 1. I pulled out my phone again and double-checked the signal. Full bars. Good. I need to stay connected. Then I sat on the couch, leaning my head back against the worn cushions. My eyes drifted to the ceiling, tracing the cracks in the wood. This wasn't how I pictured my life at 45, hiding out in a safe house, my marriage in ashes, my wife shacked up with some sleazy guy. But maybe it was better this way. Cleaner. Clarissa never knew what I really did. I told her I worked for the Treasury Department, some desk job tracking budgets and tax forms. It wasn't a total lie, just vague enough to keep her from digging. She'd roll her eyes when I mentioned work, muttering about how dull it sounded. Spreadsheets and coffee stains, she'd say, laughing. I'd laugh too, playing along. She didn't know about the encrypted emails, the burner phones, the times I'd sat in unmarked vans watching targets through binoculars. She didn't know I'd spent the last 3 years tracking a guy like Reed, piecing together his dirty money schemes while she was busy planning dinners and scrolling through her phone. And she definitely didn't know that her soulmate was the key to it all. I stood up and paced the small room, my boots thudding against the floorboards. The safe house had a tiny kitchen in the corner, a sink, a stove, a fridge that hummed too loud. I opened it and found a can of soda, cracked it open, and took a long sip. The cold fizz settled my nerves a bit. I thought about tomorrow, 9 a.m., when the teams would move in. I could already picture it. The black SUVs rolling up, the agents knocking on the door, Clarissa's sleepy confusion turning to panic. She'd have no idea what hit her. Neither would Reed. I almost smiled at that. Almost. Back on the couch, I pulled a small notebook from my suitcase. It was beat up, the leather cover scratched and worn. Inside were notes I'd kept over the years. Codes, dates, names. Nothing too specific, just enough to jog my memory if I needed it. I flipped to a page near the back, where I'd written RV months ago. Reed Vallon. I'd been watching him long before Clarissa brought him home. Long before she decided he was her ticket out of our marriage. I tapped the page with my finger, staring at his initials. She thought she'd humiliated me tonight. She thought she'd won. But she didn't know the game had already started, and I was the one holding the cards. I set the notebook down and checked my phone again. No new messages. Good. Everything was on track. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment. The safe house was quiet except for that fridge hum and the crickets outside. Tomorrow, it'd all kick off. Tomorrow, Clarissa would see a side of me she'd never imagined. I wasn't just the guy she kicked out. I was the guy who'd been waiting for this moment, planning it, building it. And now it was here. I finished the soda, crushed the can in my hand, and tossed it into the trash. Then I lay down on the couch, my arm under my head. Sleep wouldn't come easy tonight, but I didn't care. I had work to do. And for the first time in years, I felt alive. The safe house was cold when I woke up, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones and makes you wish you'd packed an extra jacket. I'd barely slept, maybe a couple of hours on that lumpy couch, my mind too wired to shut off. The clock on my phone said 6:47 a.m. Just over 2 hours until Phase 1. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, the faint light of dawn creeping through the cabin's dusty blinds. My suitcase was still by the door where I'd left it, my notebook on the table, open to Reed's initials. RV. Today was the day he'd go down, and Clarissa with him, whether she knew it or not. I stood and stretched, my back cracking from the stiff cushions. The safe house smelled like old wood and damp air, but it was home for now. I walked to the tiny kitchen, filled a chipped mug with water from the sink, and drank it down fast. No coffee here, but I didn't need it. Adrenaline was already kicking in, sharp and steady. I grabbed my phone and checked for updates. A new message from command. Teams in position. Rendezvous 0800. Black safe confirmed secure. Good. Everything was moving like clockwork. I replied with a quick copy. En route. Then I pulled on my boots, grabbed my keys, and headed out. The morning air was crisp, the woods around the cabin silent except for a few birds chirping. My truck sat where I'd parked it, dew clinging to the windshield. I climbed in, started the engine, and let it warm up while I wiped the glass clear with my sleeve. The drive to the rendezvous point wasn't far, about 20 minutes to a warehouse on the edge of town, another spot the Bureau kept off the books. I pulled onto the gravel road, my tires crunching loud in the stillness. My mind drifted back to last night, Clarissa's laugh, Reed's smug grin. I'd spent 17 years with her, building a life, a home, and she'd thrown it away without a second thought. But that wasn't what kept me up. It was the irony of it all. Her new boyfriend wasn't just some random guy. He was my target. See, I'd been working Reed Vallen's case for 3 years. 3 years of late nights, fake identities, and digging through financial records so tangled it'd make your head spin. He was a hedge fund manager on paper, fancy suits, slick hair, the kind of guy who bragged about his yacht at parties. But underneath it, he was dirty, laundering millions through offshore art deals and crypto scams, moving cash for some nasty people. I tracked him across state lines, tapped his calls, watched his every move. And then, 6 months ago, Clarissa brought him home. "This is Reed," she'd said, all smiles, like she'd found gold. My soulmate. I'd nearly choked on my beer. Soulmate? He was my mark. I didn't tell her, of course. Couldn't. My job, my real job, depended on secrecy. She thought I was just some government pencil pusher, and I let her. It was safer that way. The less she knew, the less she could mess up. But I never thought she'd get tangled in it like this. I pulled into the warehouse lot at 7:58 a.m., parking beside a row of black SUVs. Agent Rowan was already there, leaning against his vehicle, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He'd been my partner for 8 years, a wiry guy with a buzz cut and a dry sense of humor. "Morning, sunshine," he said, flicking ash onto the ground. "Rough night?" I shrugged. "You could say that." Inside the warehouse, Director Keller was waiting. He was older, gray hair, sharp eyes, the kind of man who didn't waste words. A table was set up with laptops, maps, and a stack of files, Reed's life in paper form. "You're sure about this?" Keller asked, looking at me over his glasses. "She's your wife." I corrected. "She made her choice." He nodded, no judgment, just facts. Rowan clapped me on the shoulder. "Let's bury this bastard," he said, grinning. I didn't smile back, but I felt it, the fire. This wasn't just about Reed anymore. It was personal. We went over the plan one last time. Surveillance teams were already in place around the house, ready to move at 9 a.m. sharp. Another unit was hitting Reed's office downtown, seizing computers, freezing accounts. The evidence was airtight, bank records, wire transfers, even a recorded call where he bragged about cleaning cash. I built this case brick by brick, and now it was time to knock it all down. Keller handed me a headset. "You're on comms," he said. "Eyes on the feed. Call the shots if it goes sideways." I nodded, slipping it on. My heart was steady, my hands calm. This was what I was good at. I thought about Clarissa again as we loaded up. She'd never seen this side of me, the guy who could take down a criminal empire without blinking. To her, I was just the husband who forgot to mow the lawn sometimes, who worked late and came home quiet. She didn't know about the black safes, the undercover ops, the times I'd stared down worse men than Reed. And she didn't know that her soulmate was about to drag her into a mess she couldn't talk her way out of. I climbed into the van with Rowan, the doors slamming shut behind us. The screens flickered to life, showing live feeds from the house. Clarissa's car was still in the driveway. Reed's too. They had no idea what was coming. The clock hit 8:45 a.m. 15 minutes to go. I leaned back in my seat, watching the screens, my mind clear. This was my world, hidden, sharp, real. Clarissa thought she'd humiliated me last night, kicking me out for her shiny new boyfriend. But she didn't know the secrets I'd buried, the life I'd kept from her. She didn't know that I'd been waiting for this, that Reed walking into our house was the last piece I needed. The van rolled out, tires humming against the pavement. Phase 1 was about to start. And I was ready. The van smelled like stale coffee and metal as we rolled toward the house, the screens in front of me flickering with live feeds. It was 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes until everything kicked off. I adjusted my headset, the static crackling in my ear as Rowan muttered something about traffic. My eyes were locked on the monitors, 2 angles of the house I used to call home. The front porch was quiet, the curtains still drawn. Clarissa's car sat in the driveway next to Reed's flashy BMW. They were probably still asleep, tangled up in the sheets I'd paid for, thinking they'd won. My stomach twisted, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was about the job. The clock hit 9 a.m., and the radio buzzed to life. Team Alpha in position, a voice said. Team Beta, office site secured. Awaiting your go. I took a breath, my voice steady. Go, I said. And just like that, it started. On the screen, 3 black SUVs pulled up fast, tires screeching as agents spilled out, vests on, guns ready but low. They moved like a machine, 2 to the front door, 2 around back, 1 on lookout. I watched as Agent Torres, a guy I'd trained with years ago, banged on the door. FBI, search warrant. Open up. His voice was loud, sharp, cutting through the morning quiet. For a second, nothing happened. Then the curtains twitched, and I saw Clarissa's face peek out, her eyes wide and sleepy. She opened the door a crack, still in her robe, her hair messy from sleep. What's going on? She asked, her voice shaky. Torres didn't waste time. FBI. We have a warrant. Step aside. He pushed past her, the team following, and I saw her stumble back, clutching the robe tighter. Reed came stumbling down the stairs a second later, shirtless, his hair sticking up. What the hell is this? He yelled, but the moment he saw the badges, his face went pale. He bolted toward the back door, stupid move. 2 agents were already there, grabbing him before he made it 10 steps. I heard the cuffs click through the comms, a satisfying sound. Reed Vallon, you're under arrest, one of them said, reading off the charges, racketeering, money laundering, fraud. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Clarissa was screaming now, her voice shrill on the feed. What the hell is going on? Somebody tell me. She spun around, looking at the agents tearing through the house, ripping open drawers, bagging laptops, flipping cushions. Nobody answered her. They didn't have to. I watched her sink onto the couch, her hands shaking, her eyes darting everywhere. She didn't get it yet, but she would soon. On the second screen, the office raid was in full swing, Reed's downtown setup, all glass and steel, swarming with agents. His staff stood frozen as computers were unplugged, files boxed up, accounts locked down. I leaned closer, my pulse steady. This was it, the takedown I'd spent 3 years building. Office secure, Beta team reported. Evidence in hand. Heading to processing. I nodded, even though they couldn't see me. Copy, I said. Alpha, status? Torres's voice came back. How secure? Subject in custody. Secondary occupant detained for questioning. Secondary occupant. That was Clarissa. I saw her on the feed, an agent standing over her, asking questions she couldn't answer. I don't know anything, she kept saying, her voice breaking. This is my house. You can't do this. But they could. They had the warrant, the evidence, the years of work I'd put in. She didn't know it was me behind it all, not yet. Rowan nudged me, pointing at the screen. She's losing it, he said, almost laughing. I didn't smile. Watching her fall apart wasn't fun. It was just necessary. The agents found a safe in the bedroom, my bedroom, hidden behind a painting I'd hung years ago. They cracked it open, pulling out stacks of cash, a burner phone, some papers I couldn't make out. Reed's stash, no doubt. Clarissa's face went white when she saw it. That's not mine, she yelled. I don't know where that came from. Maybe she didn't. But it didn't matter. She'd let him in, taken his gifts, played along. That made her part of it, whether she meant to or not. The feed showed Reed in cuffs now, shoved into the back of an SUV. He was sweating, his cocky grin long gone. I want my lawyer, he kept saying, like that'd save him. It wouldn't. We had him cold, bank records, wiretaps, witnesses. 3 years of my life, boiled down to this moment. I leaned back in the van's chair, the headset pressing against my ear. The house was a mess now, furniture overturned, closets emptied. Clarissa sat there, head in her hands, crying. An agent handed her a tissue, but she didn't take it. She just kept muttering, "This can't be happening." I thought about last night, her laughing, telling me to leave. She thought she was in control, that she'd humiliated me. Now look at her. The radio crackled again. Alpha team, evidence secured. Moving to transport. I glanced at Rowan. Office hall. I asked. He grinned. Enough to bury him for 20 years. Maybe more. I nodded. Good. The screen showed the agents packing up, the SUVs pulling out. Clarissa was led to a car, not cuffed. Not yet. But she wasn't free either. Where are you taking me? She asked, her voice small. Station, the agent said. We've got questions. The van went quiet as the feeds cut off, the operation wrapping up clean. Rowan pulled out a pack of gum and offered me a piece. I took it, chewing slow, the mid sharp on my tongue. You okay? He asked, eyeing me. Yeah, I said. And I was. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about justice, about finishing what I'd started. Clarissa didn't know who I was, not after all these years. She'd see soon enough. The van started moving, heading back to base. I looked out the window, the city waking up around us. Phase 1 was done. The dominoes were falling, and I was the one who'd pushed them. The van rumbled back to the warehouse, the city sliding past in a blur of gray buildings and morning traffic. I sat there, headset off now, the screens in front of me dark. Rowan was tapping his fingers on the steering wheel, humming some tune I didn't recognize. The takedown was over, Reed in cuffs, the house torn apart, Clarissa hauled off for questioning. My chest felt tight, but not from nerves. It was something else, something heavier. 3 years of work had just paid off, and yet all I could think about was her face on that feed, confused, scared, crying. She didn't know it was me. Not yet. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of it. I pulled it out and saw her name on the screen, Clarissa. A missed call, then another. Then a text. What did you do? All caps, no question mark, like she was yelling through the words. I stared at it for a long minute, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Rowan glanced over. She's freaking out. Huh, he said, smirking. Let her sweat, I muttered, shoving the phone back in my pocket. But it buzzed again, another call. I ignored it, watching the warehouse come into view as we pulled into the lot. Inside, the team was already unpacking. Boxes of evidence from the house and office stacked on tables, agents sorting through it all. Director Keller waved me over. Clean up, he said, his voice gruff but approving. Valen's done. We've got enough to lock him up for decades. I nodded, my eyes scanning the room. Laptops, files, that burner phone from the safe, all laid out like pieces of a puzzle I'd spent years solving. What about her? I asked, keeping my tone flat. Keller shrugged. She's in holding. Claims she didn't know anything. We'll see. My phone buzzed again, another text. Answer me. I pulled it out this time, staring at her words. She was desperate now, probably sitting in some cold room at the station, wondering how her perfect little plan had blown up. I opened the camera roll instead of replying, scrolling to a photo I'd taken months ago during a training drill. Me in full tactical gear, vest, headset, the works, standing next to Rowan, a surveillance monitor in the background. You could just make out Clarissa's face on the screen, a still from one of Reed's calls we'd tapped. I hadn't planned to use it like this, but it felt right. I sent it to her. No words, just the image. Let her figure it out. The phone rang again almost instantly. Her name flashed, insistent. I let it ring twice before picking up, my voice calm. Yeah. She was breathing hard on the other end, like she'd been running. What the hell is that picture? She demanded. What did you do? I leaned against the table, watching an agent bag up a stack of Reed's fake invoices. You said no papers were needed, I told her, keeping it simple. Guess you were right. She started to say something, her voice rising, but I hung up before she could finish. The line went dead, and I felt a weight lift off me, small but real. Rowan walked over, chewing his gum loud. She get the memo? He asked. She's getting there, I said, tucking the phone away. He laughed, shaking his head. Man, you're cold. I like it. I didn't respond. Cold wasn't the word. I wasn't trying to hurt her, not like that. But after 17 years of being invisible to her, of her rolling her eyes at my boring life, I wasn't about to explain myself now. She'd see it all soon enough. Keller called us into a briefing room, a small space with a whiteboard and a few chairs. The screens were back on, showing footage from the house raid looped on mute. Valen's in processing, he said, pointing at a file. Singing already, trying to cut a deal. I wasn't surprised. Guys like Reed always folded when the cuffs went on. What's he saying? I asked. Keller flipped open the folder. Claims she knew the wife. Says she was in on the accounts, the gifts. Trying to pin it on her. My jaw tightened. She didn't, I said, firm. She's clueless, not crooked. Keller raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. We'll dig. See what sticks. I thought about that, Clarissa knowing. She didn't. I'd lived with her long enough to be sure. She'd taken Reed's money, sure. The jewelry, the car, the villa she'd bragged about, but she thought it was just him showing off. She wasn't smart enough to hide millions, not careful enough to play that game. But the evidence was there. $140,000 in gifts traced to her name, all tied to Reed's laundering. The villa in Mykonos wasn't a timeshare like she'd told her friends. It was a front. She was in deep, even if she didn't mean to be. My phone buzzed again, another call. I silenced it this time, letting it go to voicemail. I could hear her voice in my head anyway, pleading, yelling, demanding answers. She'd get them, just not from me. Not yet. Keller handed me a coffee, black and bitter, and I took a sip, the heat waking me up. You're off the field for now, he said. Paperwork. Then we regroup. This one's high profile, media's already sniffing. I nodded. Fine by me. I'd done my part. The room emptied out, agents moving to their next tasks. I stayed, staring at the whiteboard where someone had scribbled Reed's name and a list of charges. My marriage was over, had been for a while, I guess, but this was the real end. Clarissa thought she'd unmasked me last night, kicking me out like some loser. Now I was the one peeling back the layers. That photo I'd sent wasn't just a jab. It was the truth, me, the real me, the guy she'd never bothered to see. She'd call again. I knew it. And maybe I'd answer. But for now, I let the silence settle, the coffee cooling in my hand. The game wasn't over. It was just starting. The warehouse was quiet now, the buzz of the morning fading as the team scattered to their next assignments. I sat alone in the briefing room, the whiteboard still staring back at me with Reed's name scrawled in black marker. My coffee was cold, but I sipped it anyway, the bitter taste keeping me sharp. My phone sat on the table, silent for the first time in hours. Clarissa had stopped calling. Maybe she'd given up. Maybe she was too busy freaking out at the station. Either way, I didn't care. Not right then. I leaned back in the chair, my eyes drifting to the stack of files Keller had left behind. Reed's life, my work, all boxed up and ready to bury him. The door creaked open, and Rowan poked his head in. Interrogation starting, he said, chewing that damn gum again. Valen's in room 3. One in. I nodded, pushing myself up. My boots echoed on the concrete as we walked down the hall, past agents hunched over laptops and evidence bags. The interrogation rooms were in the back, small, gray boxes with one-way glass and metal chairs bolted to the floor. I stopped at the window, looking in. Reed was there, cuffed to the table, his fancy suit swapped for a jumpsuit. He looked smaller without the swagger, his hair greasy, his eyes darting around like a trapped rat. Agent Torres was already inside, flipping through a file, calm as ever. You've got a lot to say, Reed, he started, his voice steady. Let's hear it. Reed leaned forward, his cuffs clinking. I'll talk, he said, too fast. But you gotta cut me a deal. I'm not the big fish here. Torres didn't flinch. You're the one in cuffs. Start talking and we'll see. Reed swallowed hard, then launched in. It's her, Clarissa. She knew about the accounts. She helped set them up. The jewelry, the car, she pushed for it. Said we needed to look legit. I felt my fists clench at my sides. He was lying, and not even well. Clarissa didn't know a damn thing about laundering. She could barely balance her own checkbook. But Reed kept going, spinning his story. She's got a safe deposit box downtown. Check it. You'll find proof. Torres scribbled something down, then looked up. We'll check. Anything else? Reed nodded, eager now. The villa, she picked it. Said it'd be our getaway. She's in on all of it. I turned away from the glass, my jaw tight. Rowan raised an eyebrow. He's desperate, he said, throwing her under the bus to save his ass. Yeah, I muttered. Won't work. I knew Clarissa wasn't innocent. She'd taken the gifts, flaunted them, let Reed worm his way in. But she wasn't a mastermind. She was just greedy, blind, too caught up in her soulmate to ask where the money came from. The Bureau would figure that out fast. They already had the paper trail, $140,000 in assets tied to her name, all from Reed's dirty cash. Jewelry she wore to parties, a car parked in our garage, that villa she bragged about on the phone to her sister. It was enough to drag her in, even if she didn't know the full game. I walked back to the briefing room, needing air. My phone buzzed again, not Clarissa this time, but my lawyer, Mike. I answered, keeping it short. What's up? His voice was all business. She's asking to see you. Clarissa. Called my office from the station, says it's urgent. I rubbed my temple, the headache starting to build. She's in holding? I asked. Yeah, Mike said. Not charged yet, but they're digging. She's scared. Wants to talk. I didn't say anything for a second, just let the words hang there. You don't have to, he added. She's not your problem anymore. He was right. She wasn't. But something in me, maybe the 17 years we'd had, made me nod. Set it up, I said. I'll go. The call ended, and I sat back down, staring at the files. Reed was still in there, flapping his gums, trying to claw his way out. The safe deposit box was a bluff. I bet my truck on it. But the villa was real. We traced it weeks ago. A $2 million property in Mykonos bought through a shell company Reed controlled. Clarissa thought it was a romantic gift, not a laundering front. She'd posted pictures online, all smiles, oblivious. Now it was evidence, and her name was on the deeds. Probation at least, maybe worse. She was in the system now, caught in the net I'd cast for him. An hour later, Mike texted me the details, Bureau Conference Room, 2 p.m. I spent the time sorting through evidence, double-checking the haul from the house. The burner phone had calls logged to Reed's contacts. The cache was marked with serial numbers we could trace. Solid stuff. By the time I left for the meeting, my head was clear. I drove to the station alone, the city loud around me, horns honking, people rushing. The building was all concrete and glass, cold inside. An agent led me to the room, a beige box with a table and 2 chairs. I sat, waiting. The door opened, and Clarissa walked in. No cuffs, but she looked rough, a hair tangled, eyes red, her robe swapped for jeans and a sweatshirt. She stopped when she saw me, her mouth opening, then closing. Sit, I said, nodding at the chair. She did, slow, like she wasn't sure. They're saying I'm involved, she started, her voice small. I didn't know, I swear. I didn't answer, just watched her. She fidgeted, then leaned forward. You did this, didn't you? The raid, the arrest, it's you. I nodded, just once. Yeah. Her eyes widened, tears welling up. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. Who you really are. I leaned back, keeping my voice even. You never asked, I said. You never cared. And that was it, the truth, plain and simple. She stared at me, tears spilling now, but I didn't move. This was her mess. I just lit the fuse. The conference room felt like a freezer, the air heavy with that stale smell of old carpet and cheap coffee. Clarissa sat across from me, her hands twisting together on the table, tears streaking down her face. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the last 24 hours had shrunk her into someone I barely recognized. Why didn't you tell me who you really were? She'd asked, her voice breaking on every word. I'd answered her straight. You never asked. You never cared. It wasn't mean, just true. 17 years, and she'd never once pushed past the surface, never wondered why I was gone so much or what I did behind that locked office door. Now here we were, staring at each other across a table in a bureau building, the life we'd built in pieces. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, sniffling loud. I cared, she said, but it sounded weak, like she didn't believe it herself. I didn't know it was this. FBI? Raids? You were supposed to be an accountant. Her voice rose at the end, almost a yell, like she was mad I'd tricked her. I didn't flinch. I told you I worked for the government, I said, keeping it calm. You filled in the rest. Didn't want to hear more? She shook her head fast, like she could shake off the truth. That's not fair, she muttered. You hid it. You lied. I leaned forward then, just a little, my hands flat on the table. I didn't lie, I said. I protected you. Kept you out of it. Until you let him in. Her face crumpled at that. Reed's name didn't even need saying. She knew who I meant. I didn't know what he was, she whispered, staring down at her hands. He was nice to me. He listened. You were always distant. Distant. The word hit me, but not hard. She wasn't wrong. I've been gone a lot, late nights, trips I couldn't explain, walls I had to put up to keep my work separate. But I tried. I'd fixed the house, paid the bills, sat through her endless stories about her friends. She just stopped seeing it. Stopped seeing me. You wanted a soulmate, I said, my voice steady. You got one. She started crying harder then, big sobs that shook her shoulders. I didn't mean for this, she said between gasps. The money, the stuff, I thought it was just gifts. I didn't know it was illegal. I believed her, mostly. Clarissa wasn't smart enough to run a laundering scheme. She'd fail a math test before she could hide millions. But she'd taken it all anyway, the jewelry, the car, that villa she'd bragged about. Greed made her blind, not brains. They're saying I could go to jail, she went on, looking up at me with wet, desperate eyes. You have to help me. Please. I didn't move, didn't soften. I can't, I said. Simple as that. You're in it now. They've got evidence, your name on accounts, property. You took his money. She shook her head again, frantic. But I didn't know. You know I didn't. Tell them. Her voice was loud now, echoing off the beige walls. I stayed quiet for a second, letting her words hang there. Then I said, they'll figure it out. If you're clean, you'll walk. If not, I trailed off, shrugging. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. You're not even going to try? She asked, her voice small again. After everything? Everything. 17 years of dinners, fights, quiet mornings. The time she laughed at my bad cooking, the way she'd curl up next to me on the couch. It flashed through my head, quick and sharp, but it didn't change anything. You told me to leave, I said, meeting her eyes. No papers needed. I did what you wanted. She flinched, like the words cut her. Maybe they did. I didn't mean it like this, she mumbled, tears dripping onto the table. I was mad. I was stupid. I didn't think. She stopped, choking on a sob. I didn't fill the silence. There was nothing to say. The door opened then, and an agent stepped in, young guy, buzz cut, clipboard in hand. Time's up, he said, glancing at me. She's due back and holding. Clarissa looked at him, then at me, panic flaring in her eyes. Wait, she said, reaching across the table toward me. Her fingers brushed mine, cold and shaky. Please, don't let them take me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I pulled my hand back, slow but firm. I can't fix this, I told her. You made your choices. The agent stepped closer, motioning for her to stand. She did, wobbly, her face a mess of tears and mascara. As he led her out, she turned back one last time. I didn't know you, she said, her voice breaking. I should have. I didn't. The door shut behind her, and the room went quiet again. I sat there, staring at the empty chair, her words rattling around in my head. She didn't know me. She was right. But I'd known her. Every laugh, every sigh, every time she looked past me like I wasn't there. 17 years, and she'd never seen me clear until now, when it was too late. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. The agent at the door nodded at me, and I walked out, the hallway cold and gray. My phone buzzed. Mike again. She's a wreck. You good? I texted back a quick, yeah. And I was. Not happy, not sad, just done. Clarissa wanted forgiveness, a lifeline, but I didn't have it to give. Not out of spite, just truth. She'd built this mess with Reed, brick by brick, and I'd torn it down. Now she'd face it. I headed back to the warehouse, the weight of her tears still on me, but lighter than before. She saw me now. Too bad it took this to make it happen. I left the station and drove back to the warehouse, the city humming around me as the afternoon sun climbed higher. The air in the truck was warm, the heater rattling like it always did, but I kept the window cracked anyway, letting the breeze cut through. My hands were steady on the wheel, my mind replaying that meeting with Clarissa, her tears, her shaky voice, the way she'd reach for me like I could pull her out of the hole she'd dug. I'm sorry, she'd said, over and over, like it could undo everything. It couldn't. I didn't feel bad about that, not really. She'd made her bed, and now she was lying in it. Me? I was just the guy who'd flipped the lights on. Back at the warehouse, the team was still sorting through evidence, the tables piled high with boxes and bags. Rowan waved me over, his gum snapping loud. Valen's sentencing set, he said, handing me a folder. Court pushed it through fast, 22 years. Racketeering, fraud, conspiracy. Done deal. I flipped it open, scanning the pages. Reed had tried to bargain, pointing fingers at Clarissa and anyone else he could think of, but the evidence was too strong, my evidence. Bank records, tapped calls, witnesses who'd flipped. 3 years of my life, wrapped up in a judge's gavel. Good, I said, closing the folder. He's out. What about her? Rowan asked, leaning against the table. I shrew. 3 years, plus some financial ethics class they're making her take. No jail. He whistled low. Lucky break. Thought she'd get more with all that cash tied to her. I nodded, but didn't say much. The $140,000 in gifts, the jewelry, the car, the villa had her name all over it. But the Bureau knew she wasn't the brains, just the fool who'd taken the bait. 3 years of probation was light, considering. She dodged the worst, but her life was still wrecked. The media had already latched on, TVs in the warehouse were muted, but I could see the headlines flashing. Wife of undercover FBI agent caught in high-profile takedown. My name was in there too, though I'd told them no interviews. Reporters had been calling all day, leaving voicemails I deleted without listening. I didn't need the spotlight. Never did. Watching Reed get hauled off and Clarissa's world crumble was enough. Justice didn't need a camera crew. I grabbed a water from the fridge and sat down, letting the noise of the room fade into the background. Keller walked over, his glasses perched on his nose. "Press is eating this up," he said, nodding at the screens. "You sure you don't want to say something? Looks good for the Bureau." I shook my head. "Let them run their stories. I'm done talking." He studied me for a second, then nodded. "Fair enough. You've earned that." He dropped a new file on the table, thicker than Reed's. "Next case," he said. "Whenever you're ready." I didn't open it, just tapped it with my finger. "Soon," I said. He walked off, leaving me with the hum of the warehouse in my thoughts. Clarissa's face kept popping up in my head, not the crying wreck from the conference room, but the way she looked last night, laughing as she told me to leave. No divorce papers needed, she'd said, so sure she'd won. Now she was on probation, her boyfriend locked up, her name plastered across every news channel. The house was gone too, seized by the feds, set to be auctioned off with the villa and everything else Reed had touched. She'd moved in with her sister, last I heard. No more fancy cars, no more trips. Just a small apartment and a court-ordered class on how not to be a fool with money. I stood up, stretching my legs, and walked over to the evidence tables. The stuff from the house was there, my old laptop, the safe's contents, even a photo frame I'd hung in the hall. Me and Clarissa at the beach, smiling like we meant it. I picked it up, running my thumb over the glass. That was a long time ago, back when she still looked at me like I mattered. I set it back down, face first, and turned away. No point in holding on to it. The past was done, and I wasn't the type to dwell. My phone buzzed. "Mike, my lawyer. Press keeps calling. You sure no comment?" I texted back. "Sure. Let it die down." He replied with a thumbs up, and I pocketed the phone. The warehouse was slowing down now, agents heading out, the day winding to a close. Rowan came over again, tossing his gum wrapper in the trash. "Beer?" he asked. "Team's hitting the bar later. Celebrate." I thought about it. Cold bottle, loud laughs, a chance to shake this off. "Yeah," I said. "I'm in." We left the warehouse as the sun dipped low, the sky turning orange over the city. The bar was a dive a few blocks away, all sticky floors and neon signs. The team was already there. Torres, a couple others, Keller even showed up for a round. They raised their glasses when I walked in, cheering like I'd won something big. To the man who took down Valen. Rowan yelled, and I let myself smile, just a little. The beer was cold, the chatter loud, and for the first time in months, I felt light. No more hiding, no more pretending. Reed was gone, Clarissa was out, and I was still standing. The night stretched on, the bar emptying out slow. I stayed until last call, nursing a second beer, watching the team laugh and swap stories. This was my life now, work, purpose, people who got it. Clarissa had her sentencing, her probation, her sister's couch. I had this, and it was enough. I paid my tab, stepped outside, and breathed in the cool night air. The headlines would fade, the calls would stop. Tomorrow, I'd open that new file. Tonight, I just walked home, the city quiet around me, feeling like myself again. The morning after the bar, I woke up in my new apartment, a small place downtown, all bare walls and unpacked boxes. The bed was just a mattress on the floor, but it was mine, no traces of Clarissa or the life we'd had. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, hitting my eyes, and I groaned, rolling over to check my phone. It was 7:30 a.m., later than I'd meant to sleep. A text from Rowan sat unread. "Good night?" "Huh?" "Team's still buzzing." I smirked, tossing the phone aside. Last night had been loud, beers, laughs, the team treating me like some hero. It felt good, but now it was back to reality. I got up, my joints stiff from the mattress, and shuffled to the kitchen. The coffee maker was still in a box somewhere, so I boiled water in a pot and dumped in some instant grounds. It tasted like dirt, but it did the job. I leaned against the counter, sipping slow, staring out the window at the city waking up. Cars honked below, people rushed along the sidewalks. My old life, the house, Clarissa, the pretending was gone. The feds had seized it all, The house sold at auction. The villa in Mykonos, too. Last I heard, the money went as some victim fund. Didn't matter to me. I didn't want it back. My phone buzzed again, Keller this time. Office, 9 o'clock. Promotions official. I set the mug down, a small grin tugging at my lips. Head of Covert Financial Crimes. After the Reed takedown, they'd pushed it through fast. More responsibility, more cases, a bigger desk. I'd earned it, sure, but it still felt strange. 17 years of hiding who I was, and now I was stepping up, out in the open. Well, as open as this job got. I showered quick, the water lukewarm, and pulled on a clean shirt and jeans. No suit today, just a meeting, no field work. I grabbed my keys and headed out. The bureau office was a 20-minute drive, all glass and steel, humming with quiet energy. I parked in the garage, nodding at the guard who waved me through. Inside, the place smelled like paper and disinfectant, same as always. Keller was waiting in his office, a corner room with a view of the skyline. Sit, he said, pointing at a chair. I did, and he slid a badge across the desk, my name, new title etched below it. Head of Covert, he said, leaning back. You're running the show now. Pick your team, set your cases. Budget's yours too. I picked up the badge, the weight of it solid in my hand. Thanks, I said, meaning it. He nodded, no fuss. Don't screw it up. The team threw a small celebration later, coffee and donuts in the break room, a few claps on the back. Rowan grinned, holding up a cruller. To the boss, he said, and the others laughed. Torres was there, a couple new faces too. They'd all heard about Reed, the raid, the headlines. You're a legend now, one of the rookies said, half joking. I shrugged it off. Just did the job, I told him, grabbing a donut. But inside, it hit me. This was respect, real and earned. Not the quiet nods I'd gotten as Clarissa's husband, the guy who fixed the sink and mowed the lawn. This was different. After the break room cleared out, I settled into my new office, bigger than my old cubicle, with a window and a desk that didn't wobble. The file Keller had given me yesterday was there, waiting. I opened it, flipping through pages of a new target, some crypto scammer out west, early stages of a case. It felt good to have something fresh, something mine. I started jotting notes, my pen scratching against the paper, the rhythm familiar. This was my life now, work, purpose, a clear path. No more late-night fights with Clarissa, no more pretending I was less than I was. My phone buzzed again as I worked, Clarissa's name this time. I hesitated, thumb over the screen. It had been days since the conference room, since her tears and apologies. I'd heard she'd moved in with her sister, a cramped place across town. Probation had started, her name still popping up in the news now and then. I opened the message. Can we talk? Please. I need to say something. I stared at it, the words simple but heavy. Part of me wanted to delete it, let it fade like the rest. But another part, the part that remembered 17 years, made me pause. I didn't reply, just set the phone face down and went back to the file. The day stretched on meetings, paperwork, a quick lunch from the vending machine. By evening, the office was quiet, just me and the hum of the lights. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city skyline, all lit up in the dusk. The promotion, the team, the new case, it was a life I hadn't pictured a year ago, stuck in that house with a wife who didn't see me. Now I was here, building something real. Clarissa's text nagged at me, though. I picked up the phone again, reading it once more. I need to say something. What was left? She'd said plenty, sorry, scared, shocked. I'd heard it all. I deleted the message, my fingers steady as I hit the button. No reply, no call back. She'd made her choices, Reed, the money, kicking me out. I'd made mine too, walking away, tearing it all down, starting over. The trash can icon blinked, then faded. Done. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and locked the office door behind me. The hallway was empty, my steps echoing as I headed to the garage. Outside, the air was cool, the city alive with noise. My truck started with a sputter, and I drove home, the skyline shrinking in the rear view. This was aftermath, hers in ruins, mine rising. And I was good with that. The new office felt like a fresh start, all clean lines and quiet corners, a far cry from the cluttered cubicle I'd hunched in for years. It was Monday morning, a week after the promotion, and I walked in with a coffee from the shop downstairs, real stuff, not the instant junk I'd been choking down at the apartment. The view from my window stretched across the city, the skyline sharp against a pale blue sky. My desk was already piled with papers, that crypto scammer case staring up at me from an open folder. I set the coffee down, hung my jacket on the chair, and got to work. This was it, the real goodbye to everything I'd left behind. I flipped through the file, my pen scratching notes as I went. The target was some slick guy out of California, moving dirty cash through fake NFT sales, millions washing in and out like tidewater. It was early days, just leads and hunches, but it felt good to dig in. My phone stayed quiet, no buzz from Clarissa or anyone else. Deleting her last message had closed that door for good, and I didn't miss the weight of it. The clock on the wall ticked past 9 a.m., the office waking up around me, phones ringing, footsteps in the hall. Rowan poked his head in, grinning. "Boss man settled," he said, tossing a stress ball my way. I caught it, tossed it back. "Getting there," I said. He lingered, leaning on the doorframe. "Team's ready when you are. That's some new blood itching to chase this crypto clown." I nodded, tapping the file. "Briefing at 10. Bring coffee." He laughed, saluting as he left. I like this, running the show, picking the place. It wasn't about power, just purpose. For years, I'd been the guy in the shadows, tracking Reed, hiding who I was from Clarissa. Now I was out front, no more masks. I sipped the coffee, the warmth spreading through me, and kept reading. The case was messy: shell companies, encrypted wallets, but I'd cracked worse. Reed was proof of that. Mid-morning, the team filed in Rowan, Torres, two rookies with eager eyes. I stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand, laying it out. "Target's name is Ethan Bryce," I started, writing it big. 34, lives in LA. Runs a front called Bryce Digital Arts. We've got him tied to $8 million in suspect transfers, but it's deeper. I want eyes on his accounts, his contacts, his habits. They nodded, taking notes, the room buzzing with focus. Rowan smirked. "Another read, huh?" I shook my head. "Smarter, quieter. We move slow, build it tight." The briefing stretched an hour, questions flying, plans forming. By the end, I felt that old fire kicking in, sharp, steady, alive. Lunch was a sandwich at my desk, crumbs falling on the file as I cross-checked leads. The afternoon blurred into calls and emails, pulling strings to get warrants, tapping sources for dirt on Bryce. It was steady work, the kind that kept my head clear. No room for Clarissa's voice, her tears, her "I'm sorry" echoing back. She was gone, probation, her sister's couch, a life I didn't fit in anymore. The house was sold, the villa too, all traces of us wiped clean. I didn't check the news much, but I knew the headlines had faded. Wife of undercover agent was old gossip now. Good. Around 5 p.m., I leaned back, stretching my neck. The office was emptying out, the hum of the day winding down. I grabbed my coffee mug, empty now, and walked to the break room to rinse it. Torres was there, fiddling with the vending machine. "Good first day, boss?" he asked, kicking the thing until a candy bar dropped. "Yeah," I said, running water over the mug. "Solid start." He nodded, ripping open the wrapper. Heard Valen's appealing. "Won't stick, though." I shrugged, drying my hands. "Let him try." "He's done." Torres grinned, heading out, and I stood there a minute, the sink dripping behind me. Reed could appeal all he wanted. 22 years wasn't budging. My work was ironclad. Back in the office, I packed up, file in my bag, jacket on, lights off. The city glowed outside, all orange and gold as the sun dipped low. I locked the door and took the stairs down, the echo of my steps filling the quiet. In the garage, my truck waited, same old sputter as I started it. The drive home was smooth, traffic thinning out, the radio playing some song I didn't know. My apartment was dark when I got in, just the hum of the fridge greeting me. I dropped my bag, kicked off my boots, and poured a glass of water. No beer tonight, just calm. I stood by the window, looking out at the street below. People walked dogs, cars rolled by, life kept moving. Clarissa's words from months ago floated up, no divorce papers needed. Just leave. I had. Left the house. The lies, the man she'd boxed me into. She'd laughed then, thinking she'd won. But I'd walked away with more than she'd ever know. Dignity, purpose, a life that fit. The warrant I'd served wasn't just for Reed. It was for me too, cutting free the weight of her disrespect. I didn't need a lawyer to sign it off. I'd done it myself. The glass was cool in my hand as I took a sip, the city lights flickering outside. The crypto case sat in my bag, a new beginning waiting. Another con man, another chase, another chance to do what I was good at. I smiled, small but real, and set the glass down. The mattress wasn't much, but it'd do. I lay back, arms behind my head, the ceiling blank above me. No ghosts here, just me, the job, the road ahead. Clarissa had her goodbye, messy and loud. This was mine, quiet and sure. And it felt right.
Bye bye, and see you on Discord.